Good morning. Boy, that first video kind of got us, didn't it? That bagpipe video. I didn't pay enough attention. I thought, man, I'll turn around and everybody's bawling. I thought that got us hard, didn't it? I really appreciate all the words that have been said today because it just really works so well with what I want to say today on this Memorial Day weekend. I put a slide up there and did a little research, and I wanted to go back through history. Now, it's kind of hard to do that because there's not enough data to do everything. But on this slide, as I'm going to go through some numbers with you, this is not just the people that died as a direct impact of a bullet or a bomb. This is people that may have died because of hunger, starvation, famine, disease while they were in a prison camp. And it's not also just the numbers of Americans that have died in war. This is numbers of everybody that died in a particular war. Because when you go through history, what you find out is while our casualties are tragic, absolutely, other countries lost far more people than we did in every single engagement. And so if you go back in history all the way to the beginning of time, the estimate is 150 million to 1 billion deaths because of war. Let that sink in a minute. I'm going off the back on my little deal back there, and I think I can read it all pretty good. Revolutionary War, 100,000 people. 100,000 in the Revolutionary War. The War of 1812, 29 years later, 25,000. Civil War, 750,000, 750,000. The Indian Wars, it's estimated between 1 and 30,000 Americans. Nobody really knows for sure. Indians, tens of thousands. I want to tell you a statistic that may stagger you, some data. In 1492, when Columbus did what? Sailed the ocean blue. We all grew up right, didn't we? In 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. In 1492, there were between 5 and 10 million Indians on this continent. In the United States area, 5 to 10 million. In 1800, there were 600,000. In 1900, there were 269,000. That's for millions. All of that is a result not just of war. They lost somewhere around 50,000 in the wars, but the displacement, the famine, the hunger, diseases like smallpox, the flu, tore those nations apart. And so you ended up with millions of deaths. You've got the Spanish-American War, 62,000. Philippine-American, 224,000. 25,000 of those Americans, 200,000 Filipino. World War I, 116,000 U.S., 16 million globally. World War II, 405,000 American soldiers, 80 million globally. Korean War, 35,000 U.S., Korea and China, 1.5 million people. Vietnam, 58,000 U.S. soldiers, 1 to 3 million Vietnamese. Gulf War, U.S., 294, our opponents, 35,000. Afghanistan and Iraq, U.S., 7,000. Nobody knows for sure, somewhere between 200 and 600,000. And so I show you all that so we'll understand the imbalance sometimes that we have because we really want to grieve our American soldiers and our patriots, but at the same time, look at those numbers and look what war has done since the beginning of time, certainly in our existence here as the United States. And what I want us to remember today on this Memorial Day is Russian mothers love their sons too. And Afghan families love their daddies. And little kids in Japan missed their daddies. And so war's been tragic for everybody. When I was a kid growing up and we studied history, I was intrigued. I don't know why this captured my imagination as a high school kid, but I could not sort out in my mind how you have a war and then you become friends. I couldn't figure that out. I always thought, okay, wait a second. We went and blowed up all the Japanese, and now we're buddies. We're allies again. What do we have to do all that for? And I just kept thinking through time. I thought, man, we went over and just tore Germany to pieces, and now we're building it for them, and we hired their scientists. What is up with that? And so we go a lot of times from war to peace, and what was isn't, and everything's new, and sometimes we don't realize history, like trying to get Israel and Palestine to be buddies. Folks, they've been hating on each other for 3.5 millennia. Good luck getting them to have a democracy over there and to become pals again. The oddest statement I know, or one of them, is this. All of the conflicts that mankind has been in were the search for peace. We're due to a search for peace. And looking for peace, we have wars because we think that's what will settle everything down. The wars that we've all gone through, they're just testimonies of man's search for power sometimes. Sometimes they're testimonies of going up against evil, like 9/11. Sometimes the wars are a testimony to wanting to increase your territory. And because of that search for what we think will bring us peace internally and as a group of people, millions upon millions have died. And we do honor our fallen today. We honor all fallen. Some have good reasons for battling. Some didn't have good reasons for battling. You don't ever know the motivations of why people do everything they do. But I want to honor our American heroes and our heroes right now. Heroes that are out in the field right now today for us, with their lives in peril right this moment. I want to honor those folks. I was just talking this morning, texting back and forth with the gal, one of my soldiers' daughters that had the horrible car wreck. And she's okay now. She's graduating high school, and she's getting back together, and she did lose an eye, and she's had to adjust to looking differently these days and scars. But her daddy is a genuine American hero. And I want to honor our heroes, but at the same time, I want us to understand the peace they are fighting for is temporary. Now, it keeps us safe for a while, and it might keep our kids safe for a little bit, but it's not going to last forever. And here's why. Mankind, men and women, we cannot produce lasting peace. We can't. It's not within us. We don't have the ability as a humankind to produce peace on our own accord. Now, we can look for it in a lot of ways, can't we? Now, as individuals, we do a lot of stuff to look for peace, right? We look for accomplishments sometimes. Man, if I'll just get that right there, I'll have some peace in my life. I thought that. That's why I got 5 college degrees. And I just kept thinking, sooner or later, if you know enough and you get smart enough, peace will just happen. And then after the 5th one, I thought, I'm the stupidest man on the planet. That didn't work. And sometimes we think accomplishments. When I was a kid, growing up in a relatively dysfunctional family, I thought, well, if I can just win enough tennis tournaments. And after a while, I had like 100 trophies or something like that in a trophy case. And my nephew said, can I play with those? I said, sure. I didn't care. They didn't mean nothing because they didn't do everything I thought they'd do. Sometimes we think possessions will give us peace, right? So we think, man, if I could just have this little house on the pond, everything would be all right. And you just take your troubles out there with you if you're not careful. If you don't have somewhere to put them, you just keep them. Or if I could just have this setting, or maybe if I could build a cabana outside with a swing in it with one of those misting systems, and I could sit out there and look at stars and praise God, and I'd finally have peace. Well, good luck. Sometimes we think, well, substances will do it, right? If you don't have enough peace in your life, there's always Chardonnay. Or whatever the case may be, whatever pill you want to have, whatever drug you need, whatever whatever you need to do. And those help, and I never denigrate anybody for needing medication, okay? Ever, never, ever. And there's a sermon in that. Because I've told you, I have to take anti-anxiety medicine ever since they'll put those doggone stents in my heart. That stuff flips me out. I don't know what it did, but boy, thank heaven for sertraline. But it doesn't give me peace. Therapy's a wonderful thing. But if it's not leading you to God's heart, it's not going to give you lasting peace. Sometimes individuals think, well, if I could just have this right relationship. Now, how many girls in my career have I worked with that thought, if I could just get that guy, life will be perfect and I'll have peace. And she gets him and finds out life is far from perfect and you don't have any peace whatsoever. Because a relationship, while they're wonderful and I love them, they can't do that. And sometimes even marriage, we think, boy, we just give each other peace in marriage. Sometimes. We got a showing in our house at 1 o'clock right now, and I'm going to guarantee you there ain't no peace. We just don't talk. You know, I clean toilets and she scrubs windows, and that's the way it is. But it's not real peaceful. We look for it in our kids. Man, if we just have some beautiful children, little rugrats running around, we're going to have some peace, aren't we? You're going to have joy, but you're not going to have peace for the rest of your life. You got to raise them and take care of them and pay for them and worry about them, and they don't get stuff right, and now you're messed up. Doesn't do it. Sometimes we think benevolent work, if we just feed enough people here at our church, that'll give me peace. Well, that helps because you're getting kind of close to the heart of God. Sometimes we think fitness will give us peace, right? Man, I'm on that wagon right there. You know, if I can just go far enough on my bicycle, I'll find peace. Well, I do, but when I get back and get off my bike, I pick my stuff back up again. And I don't have peace anymore. And then the doctors mess that up. Any of your doctors ever talk to y'all about your BMI? I hate that number. That's why you got to say that number to me. That's the most depressing number on the planet. For me to get to my healthy BMI, I have to be as skinny as I was in high school. That was 31, 36 size jeans. That ain't going to happen. BMI, all that means is bust my intestines. I don't know what that means. Body mass index, that is the worst thing on the planet. You have to get down to having an eating disorder to get down to that weight, and then it never moves. You get to 25 and you lose 40 pounds, it's just 24.9. It's just depressing. That ain't going to give you any peace. And then sometimes it's meditation. And meditation's a wonderful thing. But at some point, you got to quit meditating. And as people, we often have tried things like, as a nation, well, let's do diplomacy. Let's send Nikki Haley somewhere. Let's send Kissinger somewhere. And that's how we're going to do it. We're going to have peace through diplomacy. Well, how does that work for us? Or how about this? We'll have peace through treaties. We'll have treaties. That's what will happen. Well, they had a treaty at the end of the Revolutionary War, and then they had another fight 29 years later. Treaties don't do a lot. We can fight wars. We can bring peace through war, and sometimes folks have found that necessary. You got to go stop the evil that's destroying the good. Doesn't last. Or sometimes, how about what we need to do is we need to hire 10,000 more policemen. And God bless policemen. I love them. And that'll bring peace. Might bring control. Or how about this? Let's form NATO. That'll keep the peace, right? Tell them that in Ukraine. Well, then we'll have social movements like the hippies. Y'all remember the hippies? Hippies, yeah, that's cool. Big bell bottoms. Guys wore vests with no shirt underneath them. Girls wore whatever, and ran around to the soldiers and put flowers in the ends of their rifles and stuff, flower power, hippie power, and all that stuff, social movements. You know, even wonderful, beautiful social movements like the equal rights movement, civil rights movement. That itself cannot keep peace and maintain peace. Or we try now, we have DEI statements. I don't know why, diversity, inclusion, equity. I don't know how those got turned into bad words, but they did. And so now we have DEI statements trying to bring peace. Not going to work. Yeah, it helps something, but it's not going to work. And so then we get religion. And you know me, when I say religion, I'm not talking about faith. Religion is when you believe a system of rules and beliefs will save your soul. So we get religion and we think, well, if we'll just all agree on everything and if we'll all just be the same, if we'll all keep the same rules, we'll have peace. Well, folks, our own church for 200 years has proven that doesn't work. And so the truth is this. The best we can do as people is chase symptoms. We eradicate symptoms. but we don't address the problem unless we go to God. Because here's the real problem with those numbers I put up for you. Here's the real problem with war, and here's the real problem where heroes die. It's estrangement from God. That's it. There is no peace in the world because people are estranged from God, or worse, Christians forget God. We start thinking about ourselves and not God. We start worrying about ourselves and not God. We start thinking as Americans, but not like God. And so then peace is all lost. Even though Jesus said in John 14, because here we go, we're going to wrap it up. Here's what Jesus said. My peace I give to you. My peace. He's talking about the peace that you can sit in a boat in a storm and go to sleep. He's talking about the peace that can go to a cross and say, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing because you're going to take me home anyway. That's what Jesus said. My peace I give you. Not as the world gives peace. This ain't no treaty. This is not a social movement. This is not a war. That's what they thought. It's not a war. This is my peace I give to you. And then he says, don't be troubled. Don't be afraid. Man, doesn't that sound good? Doesn't it sound good to live a life that I'm not troubled? I'm not afraid. God's got this. Wow. That's what Jesus said, I want to give you. You know what Isaiah calls Jesus? He's the Prince of what? Jesus is the Prince of Peace. And here's the peace that's talking about. Jesus wants to give you internal peace. Peace that cannot go away. Peace that is always there. Peace that dominates everything you do. Jesus wants to give you peace with other people. Jesus wants to give you peace with God, so that all there is between you and God is a solid, wonderful relationship. Jesus wants to give you peace about the ending of your life. So you know, die now, die later, die however, I'm going straight to heaven. And he wants you to be at ease about that. See, Jeremiah in Jeremiah chapter 6, here's what he says about the prophets. Your prophets take your wounds lightly. Now here's what he means by that. What that really means is not that they don't consider your wounds a big deal. They don't. But what he's talking about is, you've got a mortal wound. Israel is dying. They're bleeding to death as a country. You're going to die, and your prophets they're just putting a Band-Aid on it. They don't take this seriously. And here's what their prophets do. You run around and say, peace, peace. There's no peace. See, they couldn't bring it. Men can't bring it. Kings can't bring it. Jesus is the Prince of Peace. And here's the peace Jesus will give you. Here's what it is. It's a transformative peace. It'll change your life. It'll change your relationships. It'll change how you parent. It'll change what kind of neighbor you are. It'll change what kind of friends you are. It'll change what kind of spouse you are. It'll change what kind of church member you are. Because you will be transformed by the peace that Jesus puts in your life. Jesus' peace is a reconciling peace. It pulls people together. Folks, I can tell you every treaty that's ever been written is going to be broken because a treaty can't pull people together. Jesus' peace is a reconciling peace. Jesus' peace is a joyful peace. So everywhere you go, you spread the joy of God to everybody you talk to. That's what he wants to put in you. Jesus' peace is a bonding peace. It's like super glue, and it puts us all together. And we can't rip ourselves apart because that's what that peace does for us. Jesus' peace is that thing Paul talks about. It's the peace that passes what? All understanding. What Paul's saying is, Jesus wants you to have peace that you can never really explain. All you can do is attribute it to God. All you can do is give glory to God. When people say, well, explain how this works. Well, brother, I can't tell you. Until you give your life to the Lord, until you give that testimony to the world in that water, you're not going to get it. You got to get to the point where you just got no peace in your life, and you got to have something, and you'll get this peace that passes all understanding. You can't legislate it. You can't write it. You can't codify it. You can't make rules about it. And you can't demand it. All you can do is participate in it. All you can do with God's peace is bask in it. Just bask in that glow. Just lay in it and enjoy it and let it work on you and let it spread through you. And so Jesus said in his Sermon on the Mount, blessed are the peacemakers. You see, Jesus is the Prince of Peace, and we're his peacemakers. Wow, isn't that a good thought? Jesus is the Prince of Peace, and you're his peacemaker. You are his peacemaker. He's the Prince of Peace, and he flows that peace into you, and you're his peacemaker. We're ambassadors for Jesus. We're supposed to be spreading his peace everywhere we go. We're supposed to be spreading his joy, ambassadors of joy. We ought to be ambassadors of compassion. There ought not ever be a cruel word come out of our mouth. We ought to see things from people's perspective and see things from God's perspective that gives us compassion. We should be ambassadors of forgiveness, to let things go. You know, I saw a touching scene one time. I was on the back porch at Cedar Creek Lake, and I was sitting with Melissa's grandpa. And he fought at Guadalcanal. And he did not like Japanese people. He had horrible memories. He had memories of Japanese soldiers running through their camp with bayonets and spearing men and just disappearing. He saw hundreds of dead. And he couldn't get past it. And I gave him a book. I don't remember which book it was, but it was about Guadalcanal. And he asked me to sit on the porch with him, and he started crying. And he says, it's time I let that go, isn't it? Yeah. It's time I forgive, right? If you want peace. And he let it go. And the hatred was all gone. That's the peace that only God can give. The ability to be able to forgive. Jesus wants to give us the peace that gives grace to all around us. You see, here's the way we honor our fallen heroes. We honor our fallen heroes by giving the peace that Jesus gives to other people. The way we honor their death that was necessary to give us temporary peace is by giving eternal peace to those they died for. But more importantly, for those Jesus died for. Only Jesus can give peace. Only Jesus can end wars. Only Jesus can end division. Only Jesus' peace can pull us all together. That's what the world needs. And we got it right here because we're his peacemakers. Today, if you're not a Christian and want to be one, this is the time. You come see me right now. You see Daryl, you see John, Brent, Sherry, anybody in here you want to talk to, grab them. Say, I want to be a Christian right now. If you got a prayer today, some of you got some concerns. Some of you haven't felt very good. Some of you got stuff coming up with surgeries and things. If you trust somebody, go to them and tell them. So I need you to pray for me right now. But we're going to do our hug and howdy time. Boy, Melissa hates it when I say that. We're going to do our hug and howdy time because y'all love it. Got a little song you're going to listen to while we're doing this if you'd rather watch the song. And then after that, Brent's going to wrap us up with a great ending.